Alright, let's talk about Jared Cannonier for a second, because the dude is in a weird spot in his career right now. I mean, for the longest time, he was one of the top guys at middleweight. I mean, we're talking about a guy who schooled some tough opponents. He TKO'd Jack Hermanson, beat the crap out of guys like Gastelum and Vittori, knocked out Derek Brunson, and even edged out a win over Sean Strickland. That's a solid resume, but lately things have been taking a turn. He's been facing the new blood of the division, guys like Nazardine Imavov and Cajo Brajalo, and it hasn't really been going his way. Now he's on a 2-fight losing streak, and instead of giving him more of a favorable matchup, the UFC is throwing him right back into the fire. This time, they've got him fighting Gregory Rodrigues, a young, hungry fighter, and he's getting a massive opportunity against the number 7 middleweight in the world. That tells you exactly what's happening here. The UFC is using Cannonier to build up fresh talent. Oh, and let's not forget, Cannonier is 40 years old, and at this stage in his career, they're not making it easy for him at all. He's not getting a veteran-friendly matchup, he's being fed to the rising contenders. If he loses this one, he's looking at a 3-fight losing streak, and potentially being pushed out of the top 10 altogether. Now, can Cannonier win this Saturday? Of course. Will he win? Man, I don't know, man. Honestly, I have to lean towards Gregory Rodrigues. Cannonier is still dangerous, no doubt about it, but at 40 years old, coming off back-to-back losses and facing younger, powerful guys like Rodrigues, it's a tough ask. Rodrigues is explosive, hits hard, and if he needs to, he's got solid grappling to fall back on. And it's mainly because Cannonier is a low-volume power striker. He doesn't throw a ton of strikes per round, but when he does, he throws it with intent. The problem with this approach is that if he goes up against someone who pushes a high pace, throws in combinations, and keeps him moving backwards, he can get outworked. A perfect example of this is his fight against Israel Adesanya. Cannonier had his moments, but overall he was too hesitant. Even in his win against Sean Strickland, the fight was incredibly close because both guys fought at a slow, methodical pace. If Strickland had pushed harder and thrown more volume, he might have won decisively instead of it being a split decision. The same thing happened when Cannonier fought Robert Whittaker. Whittaker mixed up his attacks, kept it at a high pace, and forced Cannonier to react instead of dictating the fight. The result? Cannonier couldn't find his rhythm, and he lost a clear decision. And this is where Rodrigues can have the edge. Rodrigues fights at much of a higher pace and isn't afraid to brawl. He throws in volume and mixes up his striking and grappling and forces his opponents to consistently work. If he pressures Cannonier, makes him react instead of setting up power shots and keeps him on the back foot, it could put Jared in a bad spot. Rodrigues, on the other hand, fights with a much higher pace and volume, and we've seen that multiple fights. Unlike Cannonier, he doesn't wait for the perfect moment. He forces exchanges and creates chaos. A perfect example is his fight with Julian Marquez. That was a fight where Rodrigues completely overwhelmed Marquez from the start. He threw 64 significant strikes in the first round alone and landed more than 80% of his total strikes. That's a ridiculous level of efficiency and pressure. Marquez simply couldn't keep up, and Rodrigues eventually put him away with a brutal knockout. If he brings that same level of pressure against Cannonier, it could force Jared into survival mode rather than letting him dictate the fight. We also saw his high volume style in a fight with Brad Tavares. That was another fight where Rodrigues didn't just sit back and wait. He pressured forward through heavy combinations and mixed in different looks. Tavares, as we all know, is a durable guy who's hard to put away, but Rodrigues still landed significant strikes at much of a higher rate and kept them on the back foot the entire fight. Cannonier, while dangerous, doesn't like fighting off his back foot, and if Rodrigues applies that same pressure, it could cause major problems. Another fight worth mentioning is his war against Chida Njonet. That was one of the craziest fights of the year, and it showed that Rodrigues isn't just a fast starter, he can fight through adversity and still push a crazy pace. Even after getting rocked badly and nearly getting finished in the first round, Rodrigues didn't back off. Instead, he upped the pressure, landing big shots, and eventually turned the fight around to get the finish. That kind of grit and pace is something we've never really seen Cannonier deal with. And that's the thing, man. Rodrigues just doesn't fight hard, he fights relentlessly. He consistently throws, consistently pressures, and he doesn't need to be perfect to win. Cannonier is the type of guy who looks for the right shot, but if Rodrigues drags him into a messy, high-volume fight, Jared might not get the chance to land it. That's why if Rodrigues can set the tone early and not let Cannonier dictate the fight, this could be a rough night for Jared. And to be fair, Jared Cannonier has good cardio, but it's more measured rather than aggressive. He doesn't fight at a crazy pace, but he knows how to manage his energy well, which is why he's been able to go to 5 rounds multiple times without completely gassing out. Look at his fight with Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland. Both were 5-rounders, and while he didn't slow down significantly, he also wasn't pushing the pace. He fought at a steady, controlled rhythm, picking his moments instead of engaging in these wild exchanges. In his fight with Kelvin Gastelum, that was a good example of his cardio holding up. Gastelum kept coming forward, forcing Cannonier to move in and work for 5 rounds. And Jarrett was still throwing with power late in that fight. He didn't fade, but again, he wasn't going all out either. That being said, if someone forces him into a high-paced, chaotic fight, we haven't really seen how his cardio holds up in that situation. He usually dictates the tempo, but against a guy like Gregory Rodrigues, who fights with more urgency and volume, it could push Cannonier into deep waters. So yeah, just in general, Cannonier's cardio is solid, but it's never really been tested in a fight where he's forced to work consistently at a high pace. That's why Rodrigues' pressure and his output could be the factor. If he makes Cannonier fight at a speed that he's not comfortable with, we might see some fatigue set in. Now, when it comes to the grappling, man, this could be another real problem for Cannonier. Look, he's got decent takedown defense, no doubt about it. He's a strong dude. He's hard to take down when he's fresh, and we've seen him stuff some shots before. But the thing is, when he does get taken down, he's not that great at getting back up. That's where things can get dicey against Rodrigues. Take his fight with Derek Brunson. Brunson took him down 3 times in the first round and completely controlled him. Cannonier didn't really have an answer for it early on. He only turned that fight around because Brunson gassed out hard, and Cannonier took advantage with those nasty ass elbows. But let's be real, if Brunson had better cardio, he probably could have wrestled his way to get a decision. And that's where Gregory Rodrigues is completely a different problem. Rodrigues isn't just some guy who wrestles for control. He's a legit BJJ black belt, and he knows how to finish fights. If he gets Cannonier to the mat, he's not going to be just holding positions. He's actively working for submission, looking for ground and pound, or making Cannonier burn some energy while he tries to get up. We've seen Rodrigues submit guys like Young Park, and he manhandled Brant Tavares with his grappling. If he gets on top, Cannonier is going to have a hard time escaping. And another thing, Cannonier doesn't wrestle offensively at all. He's not that type of guy who can just take you down if things aren't going his way on the feet. If Rodrigues starts landing clean or mixing in takedowns, Cannonier's only option is to survive and try to explode out of bad positions. And like I mentioned, if Rodrigues mixes everything together, his striking, his grappling, his pressure, this fight is the beginning of the end for Cannonier. We've also seen a similar approach work against Cannonier in his fight with Robert Whittaker. Whittaker didn't just rely on his striking, he mixed in level changes, feints, and takedowns, keeping Cannonier guessing the whole fight. That's exactly what Rodrigues needs to do here. If he comes out striking first, lands some big shots to get Cannonier reacting, and then times his takedowns when Cannonier starts planting his feet, he can control this fight from the start to finish. Now, if Cannonier really wants the safest way to win, he should just stay patient, pick his shots, and avoid turning this into a firefight. Let's keep it technical, use this for work, and just frustrate Rodrigues with the jab and leg kicks and counters. But let's be real, that's not Cannonier's style. The dude loves to bang, and at some point, he's going to get sucked into the wild exchange, and that's exactly what Rodrigues wants. Cannonier might start the fight disciplined, but the moment he lands something big or gets clipped himself, he's going to bite down on the mouthpiece and throw down. And that's where things get dicey. Rodrigues can crack, and if he turns it into a slugfest, all that patience and game plan goes out of the window. Cannonier could fight smart and cruise into a decision, but I just don't see him resisting that urge to scrap.